Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay, how are you? So good to see you.
Oh my gosh, let me adjust this here. Yeah, it's been so long. How have you been?
Okay, how are you?
Good. I think I'm just like everybody else trying to make sense of everything that's happened in the last year and a half or so. It's been such a kind of topsy-turvy time.
Yeah.
Let me welcome you to our show, which is called Make Your Own Fun. My co-host Jen, she couldn't be here tonight. She had a wedding to go to today, but she wanted to just say welcome to the show, and she's looking forward to seeing it when it's all put together. Um, so I'd like to start off with something kind of recent, and then we can kind of work our way back through the beginning and the middle of your illustrious career here with poetry and music and everything that you've been working on. I think you just did a show. I think it was up in the Sacramento area. Is that true?
Yeah, on Zoom. Yeah, I did something on Zoom. The Sacramento Poetry Center's been conducting their series on Zoom now, and that's wonderful. Yeah.
Oh wow. So have you been up there before in person?
I was there. I think it actually was, I feel like it was around 2005 or six, and I was with like Essay, Griffin, and
Oh
Scott
wow.
Weinberg and David Smith. Yeah, it's probably around then. So it was a while. It's been a long time in person. Yeah.
Well, that's great though. So clearly you made a great impression and they wanted you to come back. So um with the more recent stuff that you're doing with like the Zoom and things like that, are you doing more recent material or kind of like a little bit of everything?
Kind of a mixture. I mean, some definite recent stuff and um, some stuff that's from older times and some stuff I wrote when I went to film school in Prague. So it kind of things that kind of mix together well, I hope. And yeah,
It's a
yeah.
little bit of everything. Okay.
Mhm.
So do you think, I mean, nobody really liked going through the lockdown and everything last year, but do you feel like there's some positive artistic stuff that came out of that time for you that you're able to work up and kind of share now?
Yeah, you know what? I think I could illuminate some of that just in this first poem I have because it's called Zooming Through the World. So it's sort of like my homage to how great Zoom has been for everything. And that's
Okay.
really cool. So that kind of captures that hopefully. So this is called Zooming Through the World. Gratitude to the events happening around the world on Zoom. Listening to readings, lectures, and concerts from all over the sphere is a wondrous thing. The logistics of turning on the computer and being in a library in Brooklyn, a museum in Portugal, a concert in Scandinavia, all is possible. Walking into Zoom is like a world encapsulated amidst this hum of time in an askew Dali universe. Melting clocks, Van Gogh sky, stars lifting their ears to whisper at us like a seashell understanding how the world has become tiny like a thimble and large as an ocean eternity. Simultaneously seeking events in connection with all the ancient and new solitude, blending in a dance, learning new steps, twirling through the hemisphere, the future wearing invisible ink, unclear and profound.
Wow. Yeah. So clearly that time has been really good to you and beneficial. Um, so I kind of feel like a lot of people that I've talked to that are very artistic, and I'm getting the sense that you have that experience as well, that people just kind of hunkered down and had the do or die kind of spirit, and everybody kind of just connected, through Zoom or Face Chat or YouTube or the phone or whatever. But I almost feel like for a lot of people, this time is, really unpredictable and it's scary, especially last year more so. But I feel like for a lot of people, it was a real like artistic shot in the arm because everybody had no choice but to just be home and focus and really just kind of reconfigure and reassess like their life and their artistic outlets. So other than poetry, were there some other things that you've worked on during that time?
Um, well, I mean, you know, I did, well, it was a poetry, but a poet named Joshua Corwin, a
Uh-huh.
young poet, he got in touch and wanted to do like a kind of collaborative writing back and forth. So we did that over, writing through, to each other online with that. So that, yeah. And I mean, I'm trying to think some of the different clubs and events as it are around. So I mean, it seems busy in a way. The days go pretty fast because there's things like suddenly you can go to something like a Lincoln Center Library or something that there's no way under any regular circumstances you could do, or different things. So yeah, it's I mean, I barely left the house, I mean, I hardly have ever this whole period, it
It's
just,
a blur, right? And I
yeah.
I think that other people that I've talked to, and I mean this in the best way possible, it really forced them to think about doing things in a way that they never would have thought of before, because sometimes you have projects or things you've written or things you want to do or express. It could be painting, it could be writing. And how are you going to get that out there? How are you going to communicate? Because it I think moving forward, it's not going to be the same of just like taking a picture of something and showing it to people. I think that especially the generations after us, they're really gonna find a way to funnel all this stuff that's come, all the positive stuff that's come from Zoom and having meetings like this and interviews. And I made a movie just using Zoom chat because
Oh,
otherwise it wouldn't have gotten made, and we got it. We found out we got into a festival a couple weeks ago, and
oh, congratulations, that's awesome.
thanks. And it was just a little silly little 7-minute short film, kind of like a murder mystery. And we just used the different squares kind of as the suspects. And it was really simple, and people really had a great time. But I don't know if I would have even thought of that idea without being just stuck in lockdown going, oh, I want to do something. I want to do something, but I can't. I can't be around people, and they can't be around me. And how do I get these people together? And people were using costumes and props from their own closets and their own homemade props that they had, and you just work with whatever you had. And I realized that, what, like, you don't need a lot of money and you don't need a lot of fancy things if you've got like people who want to just get together and just make something for the sake of doing it. Because I could tell, and I'm sure you could too, last year, people were just chomping at the bit, going like, I'm stuck. I can write until my hands fall off, or I can talk into a recording device or something, or make phone calls. But how do I do this with a group of people? How do I get back to where I was in 2019? And so for me, that was what worked. And I know some other people have tried some stuff, but I guess I'd like to kind of go back to the beginning of how you first got involved with doing poetry at open mics. And um, I mean, I kind of know, but I know a lot of people watching probably don't know. And I kind of feel like asking you some of these questions is kind of like asking Paul McCartney to tell the same old story about how he had the dream that he came up with the song Yesterday. And you kind of, every time an interviewer asks him that question, he kind of like rolls his eyes, but he tells it anyway. So if you could just roll out this war horse of a story about how
Um,
you got into interested in doing open mics, and of course how the Ellyn Maybe name came about. I think it's a cute story.
oh no, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was going to some, things they had where people get together and write, and people were encouraging me to read, but I was a really shy person, and I really was so shy. I didn't order in restaurants. I would tell my mom, and I'd say I like to, and so I didn't expect to ever read. And people are saying, well, maybe if someone else can read your work, or we'll figure something out. And I went to a reading, and S.A. Griffin was there. He said the first reading, and I remember they said they had 19 readers, and they wanted 20, and people say, oh, she'll read. And they were just so encouraging. And I read, and then I remember remember some lines from the poetry, and he was so encouraging, and people are encouraging. And I just kept going, even with the shyness. And I put down, when I sign up, I say, Ellyn, maybe I'll read. And then it just became that.
That's great. And I know you've told that story many times, but I think it's such a cute story because it's so you. It totally fits your persona, and it's adorable. And I kind of thought for like the longest time, because I know that you've traveled around the world, you and Robbie doing music, and you performing your poetry, and I kind of felt like you're kind of this goodwill ambassador for poetry, because it's kind of really I've never met anybody that wasn't really kind of like wowed by what you do. So
oh my, I'm so touched. Thank you. Wow. So
because I mean, you see some people, and you've been doing this a while, you see some people who feel like they have something to prove, and they have to be wearing a leather jacket and be angry, and so a lot of slam poetry is like that, and people are trying to work through issues of their childhood and stuff. But you may have done that or do certain pieces like that, but your overall stage persona when you do like full shows that I've seen, it's just been more like, a welcoming kind of ambiance, and kind of just bringing everyone in rather than pushing back or pushing outward, and I think that a lot of vulnerability and a lot of verisimilitude too with what you and Robbie are doing. So
thank you.
Before I got into doing poetry like around the Santa Monica area, there was this venue that I kept hearing about, and people would talk about it like it was like this I don't know, destination that Indiana Jones had visited or something. It was called the Midnight Special. And I think that you had performed there several times, right?
Yeah. That was like when they did that reading, when I did the first open ring, I was part of it, was there. Yeah, that was a wonderful, bookstore and everything. Definitely a special.
And yeah, there's just so many, and I've been doing this for a while and not nearly as long as you. And one thing that kind of makes me kind of sad is it seems like a lot of the venues in the last like 10 years or so are kind of going away, or the ones that are still around, it's like people have to kind of compete with the sound of a coffee grinder. And I guess that's kind of par for the course. But have you been around in the last like 2 or 3 years?
Iguana, did you get to go to Iguana Cafe? Because they did not even, there was no way that people could have a coffee maker going, because it was all about listening. And Tom and Patty that ran it, Tom's a songwriter, and they never wanted to have there be any distractions. So a lot of people I met, like Amelie Frank and Matthew Mars, and so many people, Exene Cervenka, so many people, all these people were at Iguana at different times. And that was open from 89 to 95. Wow. And before that, Bebop Records. So there's been really unique, special places, but they are precious. And they, you feel it sometimes you're there. This feels like it could be from the 60s or something. It's very iconic, a place, but it's real precious. And, before all this, like when we think about it, this is before internet. So at all. So getting around there, flyers or being about something was in LA Weekly was totally a different world. Traffic was different. Sometimes you'd run up to wherever to go to ring it. It was possible to really move around the cities differently then without traffic. Pre-internet, it was all different too. But
yeah, I feel like even 10 years ago, I used to have like a group of friends and we'd go, to Glendale, and then a few days later we'd go to gig in Orange County, and then we go to Santa Monica, and then we go to downtown LA, and then we go to Long Beach, and then we go somewhere out in Riverside. And it's just, I don't know if it's just it's hard to get people together anymore, or the gas prices are crazy. But I think that there's this feeling that 2022 is just going to be this explosion of art. I mean, I already kind of hear it with musicians that were kind of sitting on their albums for like a year to finally put it out so they can tour behind it. But I feel like there's so much stuff that we haven't heard from, writers and actors and musicians and painters, that 2022 is going to be the year that it's like so much stuff is going to come out, because people are going to feel safe and healthy that they can go out and do these things, like, unhindered. So tell me a little bit about how you and Robbie came to meet, because it's kind of a special chemistry that you guys have for putting your poetry to music.
Oh, thank you. I met Robbie. I also, the band that is working, the Ellyn Maybe band, did Harlan, it's really interesting. I reconnected with him, and he's my cousin, but I didn't know him really in real, like we were cousins, but we didn't really know each other. And we reconnected, and he does music, and he ended up, it's just wild how it happened. So he wanted to try to do something with poetry and music. So we did that. And then when we were getting ready we did an album. Tommy Jordan did the choruses, and Harlan Sandberger did the music. And so we ended up doing that. But then when we getting ready to perform live, Tommy knew Robbie. He was staying with him. He had just graduated from Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I just loved his work, and I loved his voice, and I just could picture. So I thought, oh, that would be so cool if he could be in the band if he wants to do so. And so he was agreeable. And then over time, I'd write stuff with everybody in the band, just, because that was a neat way to collaborate. And the stuff with Robbie just seemed to have this thing, I don't know, just this magic. And I don't know, we just did that more, and did an album and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I love working with
led to doing theater shows, and you guys playing across the ocean, right?
Yeah, I mean, when the band went to Glastonbury, we, and we tried to get, hopefully more shows in the future. It's not easy.
No, you're self-promoting, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you were telling me a few years ago, even in like the San Francisco Bay Area, weren't you guys getting airplay on college radio?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I think both, the album Rodeo for the Sheepfish, which is Ellyn Maybe band record, they played it on the radio, and then Grail Marcus heard that there's Rodeo for the Sheepfish, the Ellyn Maybe record with the band, and he got in touch with Henry Rollins, because he figured he could get in touch with me, because Henry Rollins published my poetry books. And I flipped out. I was so, oh my God, I can't believe Grail. Oh my God, this is so neat. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, and he's also written about Skywrath Glitter, the Ellyn Robbie album. So I mean, things have happened just through so surreal, really unexpected.
But what's nice too is what it sounds like from hearing you speak now, and when I've talked to you in the past, it seemed like it all just kind of meshed and happened organically. And then you guys got the ball rolling, and you got some momentum. And then I remember seeing you and Robbie play at like Pond Water, and at I think you guys played at Beyond Baroque, if I'm not mistaken. So I saw you guys play it around town, and it was like, it's kind of like in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this shouldn't work, like if I just take the pieces apart and like analyze it, but it does work, and it seems so effortless. Like you don't want to pick it apart, you don't want to analyze it. It's just this kind of amazing kind of amalgamation of everything he does, which I kind of feel like he has a lot of like English rock influences from like the last 10 to 15 years. Like I hear a lot of Radiohead in a lot of what he plays. I think I've even told him that before. So for whatever reason, it's like a perfect musical background for your words, you know?
Oh wow, yeah, yeah, it's pretty wild, huh? How that, yeah, no, well said. Yeah, it's wild. There's just so many unique differences, and it just seemed to just happen. And like, I mean, just as soon as he would play a melody, like it just like the words, it just would sort of happen. And his beautiful singing voice, how it, I just know it just, I mean, there's just such many different things, and yet you're right. I mean, it's inexplicable how it would all happen. Yeah.
So when it comes to well, we'll go through like both things that I know that you do, which is poetry books and albums. When it comes to putting a poetry book or like a collection together, are you involved in everything from the organization and the editing and the artwork? Or are you working with like a team of people that kind of help you with that? Or is it different from like book to book?
It's kind of different from book to book. Like when I did the book, the first book with the spine, that collection, The Cowards of Amnesia, was published at Henry Rollins 2, 1361 imprint. And Exene Cervenka had told him about my work, and he was interested. And Viggo Mortensen ended up taking the photographs and doing the cover. And my mom helped a lot with the proofread, and just really, we haven't found a typo yet. And it's amazing that book came out like in '98. It's neat to see that really worked hard and looking at that. And then I don't know, each one's kind of different. Some books just, put together like, it's somewhere like Kinko's. There's all different ways. Chapbooks are great too. I mean,
Well, let me ask you this as a follow-up for that, books, because you mentioned chapbooks. And for me, I know kind of like when I was starting out, like every year I would put out like a chapbook and do the cover art or find some public domain something and run over to Kinko's and print those out. But I've talked to a few people on this show that do similar things or used to do similar things, and everybody, I would say maybe only one of the people I've interviewed kind of feel like chapbooks are still like a viable thing, because everybody kind of feels like there's less interest in physical books like that, and it's so geared toward like online everything now with PDFs, and you can order everything on Amazon. Are you yourself seeing less and less chapbooks? I know you were doing stuff with Beyond Baroque for a while. It seemed like 10 to 15 years ago there was like a glut. There was just wall to wall, like everybody's doing a chapbook and everyone's putting it out, and it seems like that's either gone way down or kind of been pushed to the side. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. There definitely is a lot more probably ebooks too, or things like that. There's still there's something so great about chapbooks and the tangible turning pages and reading it like that way, and it's neat. I mean, and the zines, there's still, I think, a popularity. Maybe it's a little more underground or not quite, there's so many new mediums too with it all. But I think it's a mixture. And I mean, also maybe because, trying to find places sometimes beyond Baroque that has a bookstore, or places that would carry that. I mean, I think with the ebooks, people generally a lot have the computer to be able to read it that way. But I like the old school way too. I love records and albums too. So, it's
Records
fun.
have made a big comeback, but I just remember going to places like, oh, I'm having a brain fart right now, but the oh God, what's the name of the one in Redondo Beach?
Oh,
Um, Oh my God, I can't believe I can't
Maybe
remember.
Cartel Cafe? Wait,
Yeah, the Coffee Cartel.
Coffee Cartel, yeah.
And I just remember, the first couple of times I went there was so great because it's right next to the college, and there's so many people saying like, "Oh, this is my first chapbook, and these are like the best 20 poems I've written in the last 2 years." And people would pass the hat too for the poets, and you don't really see that anymore. And I always feel bad because I feel like a lot of younger people, like high school and college age, and I've said this to the other writers that I've interviewed on here, I feel like they're almost kind of deprived of that first, um, like not giving birth to the thing because they made it at home or whatever, but like showing it to the world, like releasing it into the world, that they're denied that like instant reaction from a crowd, or like holding it up and saying like, here it is, here's this thing I've been working on all year, and these are the poems, and here's my here's my dorky little author photo on the back and some stuff I put on the back. I feel like you just don't get that kind of gratitude or instant reaction that if you put something out on the internet, people, I feel like it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. So I'm hoping, like what I was saying before with like 2022, I'm hoping a lot of I say kids, but teenagers, young adults, will get that experience that I had when I was doing chapbooks like 10 or 15 years ago, of like standing on a stage at a microphone with a light and showing it to people, so they see it, they see me open it, they see me pick out a poem with a post note or something, and they hear me reading it, and they automatically associate that with me because the other people I've interviewed that are writers as well, it's kind of like there's that fear, I think, of people doing stuff less and less because they're so worried about being lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Well, something else that you brought up, and that I think I'll just kind of repeat the question on the other art form. So when you go to make a CD or a recording with your band, how involved are you with the arrangements and the booking the studio time and all of that aspect of it, of the recordings?
Well, I mean, with the Ellyn Maybe band, with the Roadie for the Sheepfish, Harlan has a studio, so we recorded. Well, what's interesting, I wasn't used to doing this, so I would record the poems, and then the music would end up being added, after the poems, and so it was done over a time, and it was a new process. Now, when we did the stuff with Ellyn and Robbie, we recorded simultaneously the stuff. We, yeah, there's some involvement maybe in each thing, in sequencing the album and stuff. We were able to record. Jackson Brown has really been supportive of my work, so we recorded the Ellyn and Robbie stuff at Groove Master Jackson Brown's studio.
I gotta ask, I mean, I hate to interrupt, but how did that come about? I don't even know if he goes out to see a lot of local groups or performances anymore, does he?
Well, I don't know. I think probably some stuff, yeah. But know what? I was at something. I guess I was at. I think Tommy was performing. Who did the choruses? I guess he was at something, and Jackson was there, and he got really excited because he had heard me on KPFK, and he heard me do poetry. So it was really, really exciting to me. It was so sweet, and he thought it would be so cool if I would work with music. And I said, well, I just started to work with music. And then he was coming to a lot of the events, the poetry rodeo, where we would play and back up other writers. So he's been extremely supportive, and in fact recommending the band for Glastonbury Festival and things. And so
That's amazing to have somebody on that level in your corner as a cheerleader.
Yeah, I'm totally grateful. Yeah, yeah, he's really nice. Yeah.
Um, can you describe for me the first time that you read your work at an open mic outside of California? Are you originally from California?
No, originally from Milwaukee,
Did you
from
do any open mics
Wisconsin.
there?
No, well, no, I think subsequently I did something in Wisconsin and Milwaukee.
Okay.
I lived in New York for a couple of years, and I started to write. I was an apprentice at the Village Voice in the Actor Studio, and that was very inspiring. I ended up at the Actor Studio. They had a prop typewriter, and they fixed it up, and because I was just starting to write poems, and they gave it to me to keep, and I still have it, of course. And I started to write poems there, but I still, at that point, even though I was starting to write, I didn't really think I would ever read it. And I guess I'm trying to think, other places around the country, or even in Europe for reading. Um,
But I mean, there had to be like a first place outside of California because it sounds like you lived there and then you
oh,
moved to California.
Oh, maybe the Karma Bums. You know what? Like when we toured, I opened for the Karma Bums in 1989, and we toured in New Mexico and Colorado. So I was really, that must have been it. Like when we were in essays car, like the Karma Bum further. And, that was really epic because the tour before there was internet too, to find where things were, it's like a kind of pre-internet world, and then since it, it's so different when you think about it. Just
Oh yeah,
different
the world keeps getting
time.
smaller, but there is that kind of romance, I think, when people put on their rose-colored glasses when they look back. And for me, I was just telling a friend the other day, I said, it's so distracting for me when I'm watching a movie and then somebody takes out their cell phone and then 90% of the obstacles the character has can be solved with the cell phone.
Mhm.
Whereas movies made before, let's say 1995 or 98, before that time, there were all these places people had to go and they had to run to a phone booth or they had a beeper or
Oh,
they had to run home to check their answering machine
oh
and look
yeah.
something up in a phone book, or you had to know like a Thomas guide versus MapQuest or GPS. But
Oh,
there's, like I was saying though, there's a romance of that time. It's kind of like traveling by train. No one really does it unless they go out of their way to do it anymore. But
mhm.
there's just something really elegant and other old worldly about something like that. And so I kind of picture you guys like just in a car driving to these states going like, well, maybe we can find a bookstore or a place that's going to have a show, but how will it be received if no one knows who we are? We're just going to have to get up and do our stuff and hope for the best, right?
Yeah, yeah. There was some contacting of places and some spontaneity to everything too, and yeah, just yeah, it was real. It is still so completely different. Just trying to see and to get out there, and it was because different eras. Yeah, there's things like where there's a lot going on. Like this was before there really was slam poetry. It was like 89, and it was maybe not even so much touring in poetry at that point too. And it was yeah, so there's definitely ebbs and flows of time, how there's a lot of activity or early activity, but it was really neat. And I know some people like would come and they would come to another show, they would be excited to hear stuff again. And it was neat. I remember reading like Ball and Chain Record Store that I had written right then, and it was a lot of it was neat to do that. I sometimes it's just a wild how the things happen and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's also interesting how readings or open mics or poetry readings at bookstores or places will just spring up out of nowhere. And a month before, you don't hear anything, you don't know anything about it. And the next thing you know, you've got two or three people saying, oh, you've got to go read there. It's a hot, hot crowd. and they pack them in, and like it's close to a college, and people are like just burning to get up and read their work or play their song. And there's this place, I think it's still going. It might not be last year or this year. It's in Riverside called Back to the Grind.
Oh,
And it's like in the basement of the coffee shop. Because I remember the first time I went there, I almost missed it because I went in and there was no one there. And I was there like after it started, and they said, "Oh, you have to be here at a certain time to sign up." And I'm going, "What?" And then finally, one of the people that worked there were like, "Oh, yeah, you got to go around this other door and then go and then, knock on the door and they'll let you in and you go down." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is like some kind of secret beatnik thing from the 50s or 60s that only the cool kids know about or something." And so I go down there and it's like the whole basement was emptied out and they had an elevated stage and a curtain in the back and a microphone and a stand. And yeah, there were just people sitting on these little rugs. There were like 30, 40 people. And then people were standing and leaning up against the wall. And that was like a sweltering like August night or something where it was like 80 degrees at showtime or 85 degrees and people were sweating and they're holding their drinks. But yeah, they were so supportive. And I just thought that's what really kind of inspires me to keep wanting to do like shows is because somewhere in the country, probably LA, Orange County, San Francisco for, California, there's something going on and it's just you either have to find out about it or somehow it like comes to you and you'll find your people, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
So how did your first collection come about? Like, did you self-publish chapbooks or did you put a collection of chapbooks together as like a full book, or did someone recommend somebody to you from like a publishing company, or how did that come about?
Oh, well, the first chapbook really I did was called Mantra's Best Friend, Man's Best Friend. And I did the drawings. So I was trying to think I had like um an owl for Alan Watts. I had Michael Ventura like a cat. And I think I Allen Ginsberg, but I had that, and then I had, so that'd be Mantra's best friend, maybe a dog or two. And then for Man's best friend, I put literally $1 on the book. And so each book came with $1.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that was my first, thing that I ever did. So,
And then like the feeling of putting together that first thing and like showing it to friends and like going to open mics and things like that, isn't that such an amazing feeling when you're going beyond like your peer group or your close friends and you're talking to strangers, and not only do they like it or get it, like they like your work, but then they start asking you, well, are you going to do something else? Are you working on something else now? I remember after like my first or second chapbook, like people asking me that, and it was such a weird feeling because it was, on the one hand, I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. I just, finished this thing and I just got it done this weekend, and this is like the second or third open mic where I'm selling the chapbook. And then they're like, that's great, but what else you got? And it's like, it's that weird thing of like strangers and like becoming like a commodity, and like you're like a product, but not in a bad way. It's kind of like a way of like, oh, they like this and they want more. And you've done so much in terms of writing and music. You've got quite a catalog. Are there still people that come up to you at shows and things, or maybe backstage, that say like, that's great, that's great, so what are you guys doing next?
oh, there are people sometimes that get in touch on email or something, are very supportive, and or remember hearing like the band like at LA Times Book Fair many years ago or something, and oh, you know, do want to get in touch. It's always really warm that people remember and are supportive like that, and it's
I mean, it's always a great feeling, like the first time it happens, or you know, every time it happens. Sometimes I go for years in between releasing things I'm doing, you know, and then I kind of think, oh well, people will have forgotten or something, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that thing you did in like 2008, and I still have that in my room. And I think, really, like that's amazing. You can connect with somebody on that level. But I think it's kind of something similar to like when we were growing up and we had, you know, posters and we had album covers, vinyl or cassettes of people we looked up to, you know.
yeah. Oh
Kind of a
yeah.
neat feeling. Um, so what was the first like tour that you did as either a headliner as a poet or as a like in the band? Do you remember like the first time like you were like the person that was kind of like the I don't know, star attraction or something?
Oh, well, I mean, the band, you know, we were participating in something that Daniel Yerin, who's really good, he does this thing called Aspiring with Beatnik Ghost, and
Yeah.
the band did the triple spar and did 3 shows in the Bay Area. I think, I'm trying to think if that was around 2011, or it might be a couple of years after. I'm trying to think exactly, but we got to participate in all 3 shows, and he's done so much for poetry, and he has a an archive of poetry. He's a wonderful person and poet, and it's neat how supportive, you know, and some people would come up from down here into Southern California, some with people in Northern California, because, you know, California being such a big state, it's amazing how many poets and how big this state is, of knowing of the poets just in other parts of it. It's huge, you know.
Oh yeah, just to get around this state is crazy. What was I gonna ask? Oh, so I was gonna ask, you know, like I said, there are gonna be a lot of younger people watching this, or you know, writers or musicians or aspiring writers and musicians, and I was gonna ask of any advice that you had for a lot of these younger people that are starting out. But I was gonna start it off by some advice that, believe it or not, that you gave me going
Oh,
back, I want to say, oh man, like 2006, maybe 2007, when I was just starting out, before I'd even like done features or put out a book or something. And I remember saying like I was really worried about going to different cities, even in Southern California. People didn't know me, or how to, you know, work with a crowd or hecklers. And, you know, what if some things in my set don't go over well, and how do you recover from that? And I just remember you said something like, you know, just do your set and have confidence in the set that you're going to do. But you also said, but be loose about it, where you have to be able to react to the crowd, because they're there to see you, but they're also there to have a good time. So at the end of the night, you might not have done the exact set that you started out to do, because the crowd's giving you that interaction. And I think you kind of boiled down to a phrase where you kind of said, you know, just let it happen. I don't know. That was a long time ago, but I've always kind of adhered to that a little bit. And you know, I've had some weird, wild, wacky stuff happen to me doing shows all over the country, where people would just come on stage and sit and stare up at me, or come up and just stand next to me at the microphone. And you just have to let it happen. You just have to go with it, because every show is going to be different.
yeah,
And if you make people feel like they're part of the show, then they'll take that home with them too.
yeah.
So, well, that's what worked for me anyway, from what you told me years and years ago. So what advice do you have for, people that are kind of like teenagers and just kind of getting started with this stuff now?
Well, I think I would say that one thing that I found really cool is that I I know I love so many of the other arts. Like I ended up going to film school in Prague. I love film a lot. It's also real how I ended up in Prague going to film school there. But I think it's good if you are really open to all the different arts that you can, because there's inspiration there in music and in art and in film and all different things. Like I find that music comes up a lot in imagery in my work. I think that it's good to be open to the other things that can be inspiring too. I think that's good. And to not feel pressure, like I think if people, a lot of times these poems come when they're ready. The poems I write just sort of something sparks a poem and they just sort of happen. But I mean, if you put yourself under incredible pressure, oh, I have to write something this day. I mean, sometimes things, they're just a time frame and suddenly there'll be something in it and it just does happen. But it often happens when it's ready. And, over time, there's a body of work, but the less pressure, I think the more pressure one puts themselves could end up stomping down some of the natural artistic imagery and stuff, because imagery is its own way it happens. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that 100%, because for me, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've gotten back into writing short stories, especially like funny short stories, because that's like a discipline and you can sit down and say, okay, I have this idea and I can work it out. And like I was telling Kelsey Bryan Zwick when I interviewed her a few months ago, I said, but for me, poetry is more about, for me anyway, it's more about chasing down a feeling. So I kind of switched gears like the last few years and just focus more on the short story writing, and that's kind of helped me write, scripts for movies and things. But also, if I'm working on a story or I'm thinking about it, then I've got like my little receptor open for poems. So that way, if I'm working on something else, I can stop and say, oh, well, I'm intercepting a poem.
Yeah.
And then I can stop and look around and grab a napkin and a pen or something and just jot down the little title or the zygote of something. And I know, like, okay, well, this is a poem, and I'm going to stop what I'm doing and scribble the rough draft real quick, because like I'm chasing down the feeling and I don't want to lose the feeling. But a short story is like, it could take me a week or two to like edit the thing and shape it and get the clay into a shape that makes sense that I can submit to a magazine or something. But I mean, it's different for everybody. But I've been in situations before which is so embarrassing and horrible, and maybe it's happened to you, where you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden you get that little lightning bolt of a poem idea, and you start doing this and you kind of pull back and you're like, I hold that thought. I just need to but that just comes from being a writer. So I don't know if you've been in a situation like that with friends or something that are also writers, where you kind of get that their face kind of changes and they're in that writing mode and they're just like, I just need to either do this now or I turn into a werewolf or something.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Yeah, no, you really have to, like, the immediacy of something, because it really, with language and imagery, it just sort of really happens. It can be, whoa, the whole thing can just suddenly, it's
Let me ask you this. So I know that you have done, many poetry books and many open mic readings and shows and music venues and shows. Is there any type of artistic outlet that you haven't gotten around to, or that you haven't really shown to the public, that you're thinking about doing something in the future?
Well, what I'm hoping, I wrote, my cousins take nature photographs, and I wrote poems to go with the photographs. There are all these really cool photos, and I hoping, I love to see them be like, I guess we would call it ekphrastic stuff, and I think
Oh,
that
okay.
would be
Yeah, yeah.
neat, because they haven't really too much been out there yet. So I think that would be cool to do, like have that out there some way. But you never know what will come, But yeah, I'm trying to think of other. Well, you know what was exciting? Aaron Kerbel, he learned how to do stop motion animation during this era, and he made a stop motion animation of my poem, Somewhere in the Sky. So I was grateful to have a poem animated. So I mean, it's neat because collaboration, sometimes people have different skill sets and do beautiful something that you might not be able to do. So I really love collaborating, with people. And
Oh
so,
yeah, I mean, workshops are great. I prefer like in-person stuff, but I think it's just things are reopening and people are getting back out there, but it just seems like by and large, a lot of the open mic stuff isn't going to be in person until 2022. And like I said, I feel like so many people are holding back their books and their paintings and their music until they can get out there and like fully promote it. Do you have plans to get back in the studio with the Ellyn Maybe band or just with Robbie for something for next year?
oh, I don't know. I mean, nothing is any, don't really know about for sure on that or anything, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, who knows what the future holds, but I was gonna,
Yeah.
that's a little bit of a less elegant segue for me because I know that you had asked to play a video of you guys performing Myth.
Yeah, it's live at Lockett's, which was Christopher Lockett. He did this like a kind of house concert series, but it was like more like there wasn't an audience. It was like he had people come in and film different people, and I thought that would be neat for people to see something to do with September 21st, 2020, right after she passed away.
Wow, that's a really fitting.
Myth. I wanted to feel the music of your shoulders, watch the tension of CD turn to 8-track. I read your nonfiction. If that's not a crush, what is? You live 20 years away from Richie Havens, turning up at a cafe. I watch the liner notes of your wrists like a fortune teller. Jerome Robin choreographs your neighborhood with a pale peony. I heard there's a tree in Washington Square Park, dripping with handcuffs and a noose. Phil Oak sings of the cobwebs of contradiction. Did you ever wear sandals? Did you hold a megaphone? When did you start wearing cufflinks? When's the last time you played a folk song? When's the last time you kissed a girl who memorized Bob Dylan's bootleg releases? When's the last time you used groovy as a verb? When's the last time you hummed a Rodgers and Hart song? When's the last time you went to Kim's video store and rented hair? How many roads fork into most travel? The asphalt is pinstriped 1/4 of the time. I don't know what decade I'm in. I watch you watch the parade. I'm the one who whisper in your ear. The Army McCarthy hearings aren't available on DVD. I'm in the park feeding the pigeons bread and circuses. Come midnight, I watch Michelangelo leaning out of a helicopter. He has quite an eye for astronomy. Every night, Lord Buckley leaves Cafe Wall. Every night, Walt Whitman and Allen Ginsberg fly like Chagall above your window. One night, I tagged along with my flailing trampoline. I tried to visit you like Frank O'Hara's son. You drew the blind. You took away my yellow. Suddenly, a confetti of tangerines fell from the sky, labeled, handpicked by Icarus. I ate till I was sticky.
With another poem.
Oh, thank you. I can read. There's this poem I wrote for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Thank you. It's called RBG. There's a flurry of judicial collars lining the clouds. Every decision and every dissent stays in the air like musical breath. With your penchant for opera, you were a fermata of wisdom, holding on through the ravages of chaos, pioneer and epic, full of verve and mind-shattering strength, wearing resistance and resilience on your soul, supreme being, super shiro, legendary icon for good. You will remain larger than life in our memories. Breathing your last breath on Rosh Hashanah is said to be the way of the righteous. You were notorious, thrilling, doing what you were put on earth to do. You leave behind stardust and legal briefs and push-ups of tenacity. You were the first in your class. You were one of a kind. You are remembered with respect. The opera glasses hang in the air, waiting for more and more and more to see how you became music. Through the sky, wisdom sings our hopes awake. Your legacy still lives on earth and every constellation that needs truth. Oh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you are so dearly missed. It is now up to us to put our collars on and walk into the future with the opera whispering in our ear like a ferocious future and a crescendo. It is now up to us to sing your memory home.
Nice, that was great. And you just wrote that recently?
I wrote that in September. I wrote it September 21st, 2020, right after she passed away.
Wow, that's a really fitting tribute. Thank you for sharing that and the other poem you read earlier. So to wrap it up, I'd kind of like to give you this last few minutes here as a platform for anything you want to promote or websites that you want to list where people can find your books and your music. So go ahead and share that with people and let them know where they can find your stuff.
Well, if they look under Ellyn Maybe, ELLYN MAYBE, like they would see different things, and some things are different spots. But yeah, I mean .net or but different places, and there's some stuff under EllynRobbie.com. But there's stuff just by Googling my name and stuff. I wanted to thank you because I'm kind of shy, and you are such a sweet and wonderful person to converse with. So I feel so grateful, and yay!
No, I wanted to kind of create this platform for my co-hosts and I to kind of just shoot the breeze, and also for us to kind of interview people in the artistic community and not make it just a cold, calculated thing of us just going down a list of questions. Just make it more of like a conversation, and you have your favorite juice or coffee, and like you're sitting across the table from a friend you haven't seen for a while, and just
Yeah.
really laid back. And I'm sure there's things that we'll both think of after we're done that we were like, oh, I should have brought that up. But I think that something like this is a platform to kind of to bring some new eyes to your books and some new ears to your songs. So welcome for being on the show. This has been Ellyn Maybe on Make Your Own Fun. And yeah, if there's anything else you'd like to add before we say goodnight.
Oh, well, I'd say Prague is really beautiful. I was so glad to study there. Anytime travel is a very inspiring thing. I mean, not now, it's not so easy now, but in the future, I mean, just, and yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for all these different, that we can see stuff like this and around, like you can view so many, the Zoom poem really said, like, I'm grateful for all that. And that's wonderful that you're doing the archiving stuff. Archiving is so important. It's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's been a really fun time get to know people better. And like I said, use this as a platform to help people get their stuff out there. And hopefully we'll all be able to see each other in a few months whenever it's safe enough to do these shows in person again.
Yeah, I like your glasses.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just got them. They're brand new.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I haven't worn them. I've had glasses my whole life, but it's just gotten to the point now where I kind of have to start wearing them because contacts irritate me. So, trying a new look. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, it's good. Are you nearsighted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great that I can read books without them. But yeah, sometimes reading signs at night, it's just too many headaches,
Oh, sure. They're very nice. They're very nice.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And this will be posted on Friday, August 27th in the morning. So look forward to see what you think.
Oh, thank you. Yay.
No
Thank you so
problem.
much.
Have a good night.
You too. Good night. Thank you. Bye.